Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings Benny's Bats edition for Thursday, June 2nd. It's a pretty nice slate that we have here today. We got 8 games, 11 games total today, 3 games in the early slate. The late slate is definitely a GPP kind of slate for me because the pitching tonight is atrocious. There's a lot of bats that you can look at, including a game in Coors Field, which we all know is going to have some high total and, high ownership to it. But there really aren't a lot of pitchers that stand out as safe guys that you can use for cash games. So that's why I say it's kind of a GPP night. What we like to do here in the Benny's Bats section is we talk about each pitcher that's on the mound, figure out what their weaknesses are, and then figure out which bats profile to do the best against them. So let's take it right from the top with the New York Yankees against the Detroit Tigers. Michael Pineda's on the mound for the Yankees, and the last 2 years he's given up a .285 batting average to both sides of the plate. Left-handed bats do a little bit better against them, but this Detroit team is basically all right-handed. So right-handed bats in 2016 are hitting .298 against them with 8 homers in 30 innings, and last year they hit .283 against them with 12 home runs in 84 innings. So he's basically given up a home run about every 5 innings and just shy of a .290 batting average to right-handed bats, which is really tough considering that you look at this Detroit order, and you got right-handed bats from top to bottom that have power and can hit for average. Miguel Cabrera, probably my favorite guy, 411 WOBA, 214 ISO since the start of last year. JD Martinez, probably second on that list, really good against right-handed pitching, righty on righty. 362 WOBA, 245 ISO score for him. I even think you can look at guys like Ian Kinsler. You can look at Nick Castellanos. You can look at, Justin Upton, Victor Martinez. I mean, there are just so many guys that you can look at here. Remember, V. Mart is a catcher-eligible player on FanDuel, so I like him a lot over there at the catcher spot. But all of these guys, I think, are in a good spot here against Pineda. He's just been really, really bad. They're talking about sending him down. He's been so bad. So, I think the Detroit Bats are definitely in play. On the other side of this game, you got the rookie Matt Boyd in there. This is his third start. He's probably only going to go 5 or 6 innings. Then you're going to get a couple bullpen innings out of it. So you will probably see some right-handed relief pitchers by at least the 6th or 7th inning at the latest. You looking at this Yankee team, I mean, they don't really hit left-handed pitching all that well. I guess Beltran's probably the best bat they have against lefties, and he's okay at this point in his career, probably like a 350 WOBA guy, maybe under 200 ISO score, so nothing spectacular. Starling Castro hits lefties a little bit. Didi Gregorius has hit him from the bottom of the order. But if these are the best names we can come up with, I don't really see a lot of upside in this offense. Maybe you can use some of those guys, maybe an A-Rod who has hit lefties well in his career. But like I said, I just really don't see a lot of power here. I don't think I'd be using Boyd, but I also don't think I want a lot of Yankees in my lineup tonight. Next game we can talk about Tampa Bay at Minnesota. Matt Moore is on the mound for Tampa Bay. Right-handed bats are usually, the way you kind of want to go after him. 280 plus average to him, high fly ball rate. He's got a weak lineup that he's facing today against this Twins team, though. The best bat that they had against left-handed pitching had been Miguel Sano. He had like a 380 WOBA, but he's on the DL for the next 15 days. The highest WOBA on the team against left-handed pitching since the start of 2015 actually belongs to Trevor Plouffe at 340, and the highest ISO score is Brian Dozier at 215. None of these are really huge numbers, but, that's why I think it could be a sneaky decent spot here for Moore. He does struggle with right-handed bats, and the Twins are pretty right-handed, but this is not a team that hits left-handed pitching all that well. So, where he's cheap, I think he makes a little bit of sense. Where you have to pay up for him, I don't know if he's the greatest play, but I think I do want to have a little bit of exposure to Moore here. He does have some strikeout upside. On the other side, we got Kyle Gibson pitching, and this is a guy that I would like to go after. Normally, left-handed bats are the way you want to go after him. There really aren't any left-handed bats on Tampa Bay. Corey Dickerson's basically the only one they have. You look at some of these right-handed bats, though, nobody really profiles all that well against, right-handed pitching. So I know Kyle Gibson's not that good. I don't expect him to go out there and, be dominant, but I really just don't see a lot of guys in Tampa Bay that profile to do well against them. So this is another game where I'm probably not going to be taking any bats. Next game, we have Seattle against San Diego. Wade Miley's on the mound for Seattle, the lefty. Right-handed bats have a higher average against them, and this year they've had a huge home run rate against them too. It's been a real problem for them. San Diego, we talk about, it's not as horrible a home run hitter's park as some people think it is. It is a little bit better if you look at the numbers here. there are some good right-handed bats that can hit lefties on the San Diego team. Will Myers, 366 WOBA, 147 ISO. Matt Kemp's 363 WOBA, 247 ISO. Even a guy like Yangaris Solarte. I think all three of these guys could be in a decent spot here against Miley. I know it's a low total. I know the game's in San Diego. And I know a lot of people are on Miley today, but I think this is a bad spot for Miley. So he's definitely not one of the pitchers that I'm looking at today. And I do think some of these San Diego bats will be extremely low owned and do have a little bit of upside. On the other side of this game, we got Colin Rea, another guy who's not really all that great of a pitcher. Limited innings pitch, but so far he's shown some reverse splits. Right-handed bats have a higher average against him the last 2 years. I think that means a guy like Nelson Cruz is in a pretty good spot. 373 WOBA, 224 ISO, even in righty-on-righty matchups. You can look at a guy like Robinson Cano, 372 WOBA, 218 ISO against right-handed pitching. Big left-handed bat, off to a pretty hot start this year. I think he's got 12 or 13 home runs already, hitting like 290, 280. So he's looking like the old Robinson Cano again. And then they have this first base guy that they brought up, Dae-Ho Lee. And this guy's got over a 400 WOBA, 300 ISO, and limited at-bats. I don't even think he has 50 at-bats yet, so I'm not putting too much stock into it. But he has been hitting well, and he's very low owned. So if you can hop on board a guy that's starting to heat up, kind of reminds me of Byung-Ho Park about a month or so ago when he started hitting and moving up in the order. If you hopped on and rode him for a week or so, you had some pretty good scores. I think Lee has similar kind of upside to that. Next game, we'll talk about the one that everybody's interested in, Cincinnati at Colorado. We got an 11.5 total here. There was something that I read a while back about games that have totals over 11. They usually wind up to the upside even more often than they wind up to the downside. So this is a game where we could see 15, 16 runs between these two teams. Eddie Butler, not a very good pitcher for Colorado. Left-handed bats usually how you want to attack him, but right-handed bats are good too. He's been bad against both. Joey Votto stands out the most, 403 WOBA, 234 ISO, the best left-handed hitter they have. Jay Bruce, another guy I'm going to use a little bit today, had a couple home runs already in this series, does have that power upside that you're looking at. And like we said, Eddie Butler, not a very good pitcher. Billy Hamilton, another guy who kind of goes under the radar. When he's hitting in the two-hole against right-handed pitching, if he gets on, he can steal a lot of bases. And that's what he did yesterday. He had 2 or 3 hits. Wound up stealing a couple bases, wound up scoring a couple runs, and putting up like 30 fantasy points. So this is a guy that has big upside. I mean, guys that can steal bases have as much upside as guys that can hit home runs. They both have the ability to give you a really big number. If you want to look at some of the right-handed bats, I probably wouldn't unless I was rounding out a stack. But if you're rounding out a stack and you want to use a guy like Cozart or a guy like Adam Duvall, I like both of those guys too. They've been hitting the ball pretty well. And again, I expect a lot of runs to come out of Cincy, so I like the whole top of that lineup. Then you look at the other side. We got Alfredo Simon, who might be one of the worst pitchers in the major league statistically this year. Left-handed bats do better against them, but right-handed bats are knocking them around as well. They're both hitting over 330 against them this year. So it doesn't matter. Lefties, righties, I mean, these guys are just smashing it off of Simon. Put him in Coors Field. You got one of the worst pitchers and one of the best hitters, Parks. The Rockies are going to be incredibly popular, and rightly so today. Guys like Cargo, 409 WOBA, 298 ISO. Arenado, righty on righty, 386 WOBA, 307 ISO. Blackman on the top of that order, 358 WOBA, 183 ISO. I even think you can look at guys like Gerardo Parra, who hits right-handed pitching really well. DJ LeMahieu, if he's hitting in the 2 spot of that order, or somebody else you can throw in there. So, basically any bats that you want in this game, you can justify using because it's going to be a huge total. 2 or 3 runs more most likely than any other game on the board. Like I said, whatever guys you want to roll out there, you're going to get no arguments from me. I think if you're afraid of it, the way to do it is, like I said yesterday, play all these guys in your cash games for Coors. Put 5 or 6 of the guys in the Coors game in your cash game. And then for your tournaments, that's where you say, all right, I'm going to fade Coors and try to find the team that can score more. People say that doesn't work, but look at last night. If you would have had shares of Baltimore and Boston instead of Colorado and, Colorado and Cincinnati, you probably wound up winning last night because, guys like Mookie Betts put up another humongous game. Some of those guys on Baltimore had some big numbers at low ownership. So the guys in that game actually outscored the guys in the Rockies and Cincy game. So, it's not an automatic lock that the guys in Colorado are going to be the highest scorers. But again, if you stacked up a bunch of the guys in that game, if you took 3 or 4 guys on Cincy and 3 or 4 guys in Colorado, you got enough runs out of the Cincinnati guys that you probably still wound up cashing yesterday. So I think the way to play it is to play these Colorado guys in your cash games and these Cincy guys in your cash games, where everybody else is playing them as well. And then in the tournament where you can get some upside from being different, build some lineups that kind of fade this and, see if you can catch lightning in a bottle in one spot or the other. Next game we're going to talk about is that other game that we said we should see a lot of runs, and that's Boston at Baltimore. Rick Porcello's pitching, and he's actually been very good in 2016. Lefty and righties normally hit him about equally. It's not like he's better or worse against one-handedness of, a batter. It's kind of just some days he's on, some days he's off. More than likely this season, he's been on almost every game. Two guys I would look at, excuse me, Chris Davis, 394 WOBA, 319 ISO, left-handed power bat. Then Manny Machado, very good in righty-on-righty situations, 393 WOBA, 253 ISO score. So I do like those guys. Maybe you can look at a guy like Trumbo, who's been playing very well too, but he's normally better against left-handed bats. I'm not sure if I'd pay up for him in this matchup, but like I said, they're expecting a lot of runs in this game. Vegas expects a lot of runs, and I expect a lot of runs too. So I think you can look at bats on both sides. And then Ubaldo Jimenez is pitching for Baltimore. This is actually an interesting spot. Most people don't realize that he's a reverse splits guy where the right-handers actually do much better against them than the lefties. So I am not playing David Ortiz today. This would be the day to kind of skip David Ortiz, who's 2 of 20 lifetime against Ubaldo, and maybe throw Hanley Ramirez in there as the first baseman in your stack, the righty. Some of the right-handed bats in this team, Mookie Betts, 5 home runs in his last 2 games. Obviously somebody we got to be interested in. 7 of 15 lifetime against Ubaldo Jimenez. So he's obviously see the ball and hit him well. Dustin Pedroia is 10 of 26 lifetime against Ubaldo. Xander Bogaerts, 6 of 15 lifetime. So these are some really good numbers that these guys have against Ubaldo Jimenez. But again, it's all the right-handers. So if you're looking at the Boston team, you really want to stack up these righties against Ubaldo today. I do think they put up some runs. I do think they, can get you a big fantasy score. And I do think it's a very viable alternative if you don't want to go heavy with the, the core stacks. Next game you can look at, Milwaukee at Philadelphia. Jared Eichhoff is pitching for Philly. And left-handed bats are really the way you want to attack him. He's very tough on right-handers. Most of this Milwaukee lineup is right-handed. The left-handed bats at the top would be the guys I'd look at, maybe a Jonathan Villar or a Scooter Gannett. You can go down to like Neuenhuis and Presley, but I don't really like either one of those guys. I would only really use them as a salary saver if I was stacking up, Milwaukee. I'm staying away from the right-handed bats, so no Braun, no Carter, no Lucroy for me. But I do think Villar is a low-owned option because I think Eichhoff is one of the better pitchers. And a lot of people are going to be drawn to Eichhoff, which means that if you do use any of the bats on Milwaukee, like a guy like Villar, who's in a pretty good spot and is a little bit expensive, I think you're going to get him very low owned. So he's the kind of guy that if I can fit into a tournament roster, I want to do it because you're probably going to get him at like 3% owned today. And if he gets a hit or two against Eichhoff, which he can as a left-handed bat, Eichhoff struggles with the lefties, he could wind up stealing a base or two, scoring a couple runs, and giving you a pretty big score for a pretty low ownership rate. And that could be a way for you to kind of differentiate yourself if you're trying to win a tournament. On the other side of this game, we got Chase Anderson, who's actually been pretty solid lately. Right-handed bats have a higher average against them the last 3 years, so a reverse splits kind of guy. And he does have a high fly ball rate, which is not really a good thing in Philly. Philly is a ballpark where home runs can fly out of. So if you're looking at guys that profile well, you probably want to look at right-handed bats that have a little bit of power. So a guy like Maikel Franco stands out for me. Maybe a guy like Tommy Joseph. I know he's min price over on FanDuel, so I don't hate that if you're playing an all-day slate and you're trying to fit in Bumgarner and you need a punt first baseman. I think Tommy Joseph is one of the guys that I like that has some, some home run upside for a tournament. And I think the matchup's pretty good for him against Anderson, who's, exhibited reverse splits in his last 3 seasons. Next game we can talk about, we got Kansas City at Cleveland. You got Carlos Carrasco on the mound, and Carrasco's been solid against right and left-handed bats, only about a 220 average to each. He also hasn't pitched in a month because he's been on the DL, and I just read something this morning that his coach said he's going to be on a 90-pitch limit. So with his price being so high, he's the highest-priced pitcher on DraftKings. I think he might be the highest-priced pitcher on FanDuel today, too. Over $10,000, you're only getting 90 pitches out of this guy, so you're probably only getting 6 innings. I can't really use him, but I also think he's going to make life a little bit tough on the Royals. There are some Royals bats that I like. Eric Hosmer's been really hot lately. 396 WOBA, 205 ISO since the start of last season for him. 5 of 17 lifetime with 3 extra base hits against Carrasco. So he makes a little bit of sense to me. And then even some of the guys at the bottom of this order here, with Sal Perez being hurt, they got Drew Butera catching. Paolo Orlando's been hitting a little bit. Jared Dyson's been hitting a little bit. He's been playing because you got Alex Gordon and Moustakas out. I know this lineup doesn't look like the lineup that, went to the World Series and all last year, but they do still have some pretty professional hitters in there. And it seems like it's just, a next man up New England Patriots kind of strategy. Guys are dropping like flies on this Royals team, and the next guy is just stepping up who we've never heard of. I mean, most people probably can't name the 6 through 9 batters of the Royals off the top of their head. Even guys who are, pretty big baseball fans. Guys like Chester Cuthbert and Butera right now, and Dyson and, Paolo Orlando. But, I mean, these guys are getting it done. Each one of them, Whit Merrifield in the 2-hole for them. These guys are all getting hits, just racking up hits every day. So I don't think it's a very easy spot here for Carrasco. And with him only going 6 innings, I can't use him at all today. On the other side of this game, Yordano Ventura has given up 3 or more runs in 6 straight starts. Right-handed bats, reverse splits, have been doing better against them the last 3 years. I think you can look at some of these guys, but I don't really love a lot of them. Rajay Davis, better against left-handers. Jason Kipnis hasn't done all that great against Ventura, and Ventura is kind of a reverse splits guy. Lindor's okay, 3 for 6 lifetime against them. I like him as a shortstop in the 3-hole for a little bit cheaper. I guess Carlos Santana, especially if he's leading off. He's 6 of 20 lifetime with the home run off Ventura, righty on righty. I think he is in a decent spot. Like I said, I think I would like to use some of these bats on Cleveland, but nobody really jumps out to me. Last game we have on the day, we got Pittsburgh against Miami. Wei-Yin Chen for Miami is on the mound. Right-handed bats, higher average, high home run rate against him. A lot of guys in this Pittsburgh team, I think, profile well against him. Chen's not usually a guy that gives up like 7 or 8 runs in the start, but you got guys like McCutchen, 378 WOBA, 195 ISO. Jung Ho Kang, 351 WOBA, 224 ISO. Josh Harrison leading off for them now, 354 WOBA guy, some stolen base upside. I like him as well. Marte hits left-handed pitching well. Cervelli hits left-handed pitching well. Even a guy like David Freese, if he's in the 3-hole, he's another guy that hits left-handed pitching well. And the best hitter on this team right now or this season has actually been Gregory Polanco. And people forget about Polanco when a lefty's on the mound because they bat him 7th. But if you think about it, the last game they chased the starter, in like the 3rd or 4th inning. They brought in like 3 or 4 right-handed relievers, and Polanco wound up hitting a home run off one of the right-handed relievers. So, most relief pitchers are right-handed, especially most of the guys that they have on the Marlins. So, again, if they can chase Chen in the 3rd or 4th inning and put up a couple runs on the board, you're going to have righties for the rest of the game now. So Polanco makes a pretty good play against the bullpen there. On the other side of this game, you got Juan Nicasio. He's been lights out to right-handed bats, but left-handed bats have been the way to attack him. You're looking at that Marlins team that kind of takes guys like Stanton and Ozuna out of the equation. But if you get Ichiro leading off, I think he might be in a pretty good spot. High batting average allowed for Nicasio against left-handed bats. Christian Yelich, another solid cash game play, a guy that just keeps racking up hits, getting a couple walks, a couple RBIs here and there, a couple runs scored here and there. Doesn't have a lot of home run upside and doesn't really steal bases. So, he's more of a cash game play than a guy I'd use in tournaments for upside. And then Justin Bour, another first base option that they have, left-handed bat that has a little bit of power. Remember, Derek Dietrich has a wrist injury, and his wrist was actually hurting him before he got hit by a pitch in the wrist yesterday, and he went right out of the game. It wasn't even like, let me run down to first base and try to run it off and then, tell the coach in between innings. Like, he went right out of the game after he got hit. So I doubt we see him today, and if we do see him, there's a reason why they were batting him 7th and 8th in the order lately when he was a guy who used to lead off and hit in a 3 spot. He just really hasn't been hitting. So keep Dietrich off your radar, at least for the next couple days until we see him start hitting again. And that wraps it up for the late 8-game slate we have here for MLB DFS on this Thursday. Remember, if you guys are in any of those, if your tiered promotional things wound up going with your FPPs for this month, today is the bronze and the silver and the gold free roll, depending on what level you were at. So good luck tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.